Hello everyone, this is Dr. Adriel Boals of Hobnob Games. This is the fourth tutorial of our beginner series in which we're going to be discussing pre-flop raising. As always, you can find us at hobnob.games, where you can find this tutorial along with all the tutorial of our beginner series, along with tutorials in our intermediate and advanced series. So today I want to talk a little bit about pre-flop raising. Which hands should we be raising with pre-flop? Remember, pre-flop is the first round of betting when you first get dealt your first two cards. So if you recall from our last tutorial, I suggested that you stick to this 12% of all starting hands. These are all only premium, very, very strong hands. So if you stick to these 12% of hands and only play these 12% of hands, I have some really good news for you. In terms of which hands you should be raising with pre-flop, the correct answer is all of your hands are raising hands. That's one of the key advantages to playing such a tight range of starting hands, is that when you play this tight of a range and you're only playing strong hands, that means all of your hands get to be hands strong enough to come in with a raise with. So stated another way, if you only play this 12% of starting hands, you are always going to be raising pre-flop. In this manner, and stated another way, we're never going to be limping pre-flop. Limping, in case you don't know, means that you just call the pre-flop bet. So for example, if you're playing at a 1-2 stakes game, then it's $2 to come into a hand. If you just call the $2, that's called limping. And what you'll typically see in a lot of these beginner poker games, like at 1-2 tables, is a lot of people just limping. Maybe 4 or 5 people will limp with their hands. No one raises pre-flop, and each player's strategy is hope to smash the flop with their cards. So maybe they limp with a hand like 5-8 suited, hoping that the flop will come, you know, if they have 5-8 of clubs, that they'll get 2 clubs and flop a flush draw, or somehow maybe flop 2 pair. But the truth is that you're just not going to flop very strong hands very often with those weak hands. Weak hands tend to turn into weak hands post-flop. So, and even those rare instances where you fold 5-8 suited and then the flop comes 5-8-8 and you go, oh my goodness, why didn't I play with that hand? Don't worry about it. Stay confident that you folded the hand. Don't worry that you would have ended up flopping a monster. You're confident because you know that if you play 5-8 suited 100 times, 90% of the time, you're just going to lose with that hand. So that small 10% of the time when you would have flopped a big hand, don't worry about it. Long-term speaking, it's the right play. So we're only playing these premium hands, these 12% of hands pre-flop, which allows us to be very aggressive with them. It means we're always raising pre-flop. Now, every now and then when I play this manner, some people might kind of jokingly refer to me as a nit. If you don't know, a nit is a term used in poker in which you're trying to somewhat belittle someone for playing a very, very conservative playing style. But when someone calls me a nit, what I do is I just say, thank you. I've been working really, really hard on the discipline portion of my game and only playing strong hands. Thank you for noticing. It's good to be a nit. They're only razzing you for being a nit because they want you to play weak hands, but that's exactly how you become a losing poker player. Winning poker players tend to be nits. But what about calling pre-flop raises? So if we're going to take our 12% hands and we're always raising with our hand, but what if there's a raise before the action is on you? What hand should you be calling with if there's a pre-flop raise? Well, I found this on the internet and just thought I'd go over it for a second. So in this example here, there's an under the gun raise. Under the gun means someone who's in a very early position, one of the first people to act. So that person raises, then another person re-raises all in, and you're sitting there with King Jack. Every good poker player knows this is an easy fold. You're not even tempted to call with King Jack because you know you are way behind. But a donkey, and a donkey in this image is the term we use to refer to a bad poker player, a donkey might call. So after watching this tutorial, you guys are going to be smart enough to know that you're not calling pre-flop raises with King Jack. So if you're not calling with King Jack, what are we calling with? Well, it's important to cover something called the gap concept. The gap concept in poker basically says that you need a stronger hand to call a raise with than you need to actually raise with. So if we were to look at a visual depiction of this, if over here we have our strength of hands, range of starting hands, going from very weak hands at the bottom And the higher up the chart we go up to our strongest, most premium hands. So if we have a range of starting hands from very weak to very strong, you can see here that our calling hands tend to be stronger. They're only at the top end of our range, only the strongest hands in our range. But the hands that we can bet with, that we can raise with, tend to be, you can raise with slightly weaker hands. And the gap in between, that's what we call the gap concept. Again, referring that we need a stronger hand to call or raise with than to actually raise with. So the gap concept is a very, very important concept to grasp in terms of your overall poker strategy. But part of the good news here is that if you're just sticking to that 12% VPIT, VPIT means like your pre-flop range that you're playing with, that I've been stressing so far. The good news is you can get rid of the gap concept. Don't worry about the gap concept because you're only playing those super premium, very strong hands. Then you can eat call raises with these hands. They're strong enough to not only raise with, they're strong enough to also call raises with. So if you just stick to this 12% of a very conservative pre-flop range, you can forget about the gap concept. I talk about the gap concept now because later, when we start to open up our pre-flop range, when you move beyond just a beginner level of skill and start to move into more intermediate levels of skill, we're going to open up this 12% VPIP range and start playing a few more hands pre-flop. And when we start doing that, we need to be very mindful of the gap concept. So we will come back to this at a later time. So what's next? In our next tutorial, I'm going to be talking about pre-flop 3-betting. 3-betting meaning that you're going to raise after someone has already raised. So essentially, you're going to re-raise someone, often called a 3-bet. So as always, you can find this video and all of our tutorial videos at hobnob.games.